Hello and welcome. My name is Amber and this is my December wrap-up. So I somehow read 11 books in December. I'm not sure how, as I felt it was quite a slow reading month for me, but evidently not. So I guess I will go through the books and we can see together how. So I started with Demon Apocalypse, which I gave 4 stars, and I ended with Death Shadow, which I gave 3 stars. Both of these books by Darren and Shan. So this is the 6th and 7th in the Demon Arter series, which is a series following a people who protect the world from demons. It's a YA, gory horror series, and I'm finding it's just a fun time. So as these are quite far in the series, the danger is really amping up, and the fate of the world is now in the hands of our heroes. So across the series so far, there are 3 different narrators, and the books swap between them. Now, ordinarily, I would say who narrates each of these books, but I'm going to keep that quiet for reasons. So the different storylines are starting to come together. So we're starting to see how elements of a story that seem unconnected now connect. We're starting to see the threads of a wider picture. The books are full of action and gore. This one, it very much starts in the action that the last book left off with. But then there's action throughout, there's gruesome deaths. There's one death in particular that was quite heart-wrenching. Now I've only got 3 of the series left, and I'm looking forward to them and seeing how the series concludes. The second book I read in December was My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. This book has 2 timelines. One is when Vanessa is 15 and she is having a sexual relationship with her teacher. The second timeline is when she is 32 and the teacher that she had the relationship with has just been accused of sexual abuse by another former student. Now, Vanessa doesn't see her relationship with him as being abusive. She does see that it is a little problematic, or how it could be viewed problematic, but she doesn't believe that it is. But now she's looking back at the relationship and is perhaps reevaluating what happened. So I didn't enjoy this book. It's a good book, and I feel it's an important book. It shows how someone can be manipulated into believing that a relationship involving rape and huge power differences can be okay. Of course, she doesn't believe that there was rape or power differences involved. In fact, there are times when she believes that she's the one with the power. But as a reader, we can clearly see problems in this relationship, why it's wrong and why they shouldn't be together, and why she is a victim of his abuse. Well, hopefully we can. It also shows how difficult it can be for somebody to accept that something like this has happened to them. And it also shows how some people can be treated when they come forward with allegations of sexual abuse. So, as I said, I did not enjoy it. It caused me to question why I read, and I did have to put the book down for a little bit. So I've always thought that the reasons I read are for enjoyment, escapism, to learn, to take other perspectives, and to feel catharsis. But I didn't enjoy this book. It wasn't a story that I wanted to escape into. I didn't learn anything from the book. I didn't enjoy Vanessa's perspective. It was a difficult, uncomfortable perspective to take, and I didn't feel any sort of catharsis. The book just made me sad. Now I can see other people gaining these things from this book, such as learning about how somebody could end up in this situation, or learning about the knock-on effects of abuse. But for me, these were things that I've already learnt about. I also feel that this book could be beneficial for those who have experienced something similar to our main character. I imagine for some people, it could cause them to feel seen, or their situation feel seen, and it could help them along their healing process. But this book was not for me. I nearly DNF'd it. The only reason I didn't was because I was reading it for a reading challenge. It also made it difficult to rate. Ordinarily, I would give a book that I didn't enjoy, but felt others could, 2 stars, but I felt that this book deserved more than that, so I ended up giving it 3 stars, as I felt that it was an important book that could be enlightening to people, as well as helping others deal with trauma. But I couldn't give it any higher than that because I personally didn't enjoy it. So then, for a completely different book, I read Tom's Mad Mop by Celia Warren. So I was in a school, stumbled across this book, so gave it a read. It's a short, illustrated book that is designed to help children learning phonics, and it's about a kid whose mop keeps attacking people. It was fun and had a poetic flow to it, and I've not really got much else to say about it. I hope kids enjoy it, and I hope they can learn from it. Then via audiobook, I listened to The Hounding by Xenobe Purvis. I rated it 5 stars, but in all honesty, I can't actually remember it very well. So it's about 5 sisters whose neighbours believe that they are turning into dogs. Although the story is about them, the story is not told from their perspective, but it's told by several villagers' perspectives, some of which believe that they're turning into dogs, some of them that don't, some who dislike the girls and some who like them. It was an interesting perspective because it caused me as a reader to feel that I was watching the girls alongside the villagers. And although we were all witnessing the story, we were slightly removed from it, so we're unable to actually know the truth behind it. But it also gave us quite a wide view of them because of the different perspectives that it took. So the story also did a good job of telling us about particular events that happened without implicitly telling us that they happened. And part of this was through being able to take the different characters' perspectives and piece them together to make a bigger picture. And in some cases, we didn't know what truly happened, but just had to infer it from everything that we knew. It was a good book, I enjoyed it, and I felt that it captured people's distrust of the unknown well, especially in the 18th century. I then finally read a T. Kingfisher book and read The Hollow Places. This is a horror book with a protagonist in her 30s with no romance, both of these things making a nice change. So in this, Cara, after her divorce, is given somewhere to live by her uncle and starts to work in his curiosity museum. Then one day, somebody puts a hole through one of the walls, and seeing that there is something that looks like a corridor behind the wall, her and her friend from the coffee shop next door go and investigate. Following the corridor, they find a bunker, and when they leave through the bunker's entrance, they find themselves in a swamp bog-like place, which is full of bunkers like the one they'd just come through, as well as dangers that you don't want to think about. I enjoyed it. It was atmospheric and sinister, and I found that the author did a good job of building tension. I am looking forward to reading more by this author, but I have heard that her books get a little samey, but I guess I will find out. There was one part of this book that I didn't like. So sometimes in a book you will have a sentence or a moment which is easy to forget, which turns out to be very important. And either there's a big reveal near the end, or a twist, which that bit of information or moment is important to. And either it reminds you of that bit of information, and you suddenly see why it's relevant, or you remember that piece of information, you keep wondering why it's important, and you've finally found out why it is, or it allows you to guess what is going to happen and feel proud of yourself that you've managed to guess, especially if it's something that's not obvious. So it had something like that in the book, but it wasn't one throwaway sentence or moment. There was one throwaway moment, and then another involving the same thing, and another involving the same thing, until they were hitting you over the head with how important that this could be. And I suppose it could build tension because you're there knowing that it's important and knowing that the main character is missing it. But for me, it was just annoying because it was so obvious. When you get near the end and find out it is important, it just didn't hit that hard. Other than that though, I really enjoyed it and I gave it 4 stars. Then I read Brigands and Breadknives by Baldree. This is the sequel to Legends and Lattes, and although I really enjoyed it and gave it 4 stars, it didn't quite live up to Legends and Lattes. But I think that's a difficult feat for it to do, and it was still really good. So this follows the Ratkin Fern, who we meet in the prequel, Bookshops and Bone Dust. She moves into the building next door to the coffee shop from Book 1, and opens her library there. However, she feels really unsettled, and that there is something missing from her life. And then after a few too many alcoholic beverages, finds herself on the road with a legendary warrior, and the warrior's bounty, a goblin with endless pockets and even more surprises. Although this book is still a cosy fantasy, with themes of belonging and found family, it has a lot more action and peril in it than the previous books. It's quite interesting in that the first book is about Viv, who has led quite an adventurous life, settling down, whereas this one is about Fern doing the opposite. She has been quite settled, and now she is going on an adventure. I identified more with Fern than I did with Viv, and I felt that this book was a really good one to read, and I really enjoyed Travis Baldree's writing. I often found myself amused by what was going on, or how something was phrased, and I hope to read more by this author in the future. I then read The Broken Places by Blaine Daigle, and I gave this one 3 stars. This one is about 3 friends who are not really doing well in life. They travel to Rin's old hunting cabin in the Yukon wilderness in the middle of winter just to try to escape for a bit. When a storm moves in, animals start to act strangely. They begin to feel that they are being watched, and they hear strange voices in the trees. This is another horror set in an isolated place, which is something I've been enjoying quite a bit this year, and I found myself gripped, wondering what was going to happen next, if they were going to survive or not. Some people have said that the pacing is off in this and that they grew bored, but for myself I didn't find that, and I found that throughout it I was entertained. However, I did find that the 3 main characters were a bit too similar, and it jumped between their narrations, and there were times when I wasn't sure which narrator we were reading from because of their similarities. There was also part of the plot that to me felt like it was a plot hole with a band-aid stuck over the top. It just felt a little, not even convenient, but perhaps a little unbelievable for the story. I also had questions at the end, not in the speculative sort of way that I like, but in more of a how does that make sense kind of way. But overall, I enjoyed the book. I just felt it was flawed, but I would read more from this author. Then another audiobook, I listened to The War on Everyone by Robert Evans. I wasn't intending on reading this, but I was re-listening to old episodes of the Behind the Bastards podcast, which Robert Evans hosts, and there are some episodes which involve him reading his book. It was published in 2019 and looks at the history of the tactics, ideas and the people who built the framework for the increase in far-right terror. I found it very difficult to pay attention to this book, so I can tell you nothing about it. I enjoy the Behind the Bastards podcast, and I enjoy audiobooks, but sometimes audiobooks just don't work for me, and I think this was one of the cases. Then another audiobook, Good Spirits by B.K. Borison. I preferred this audiobook to the last one, but it is very different, and there were still times when I struggled to pay attention to this book as well, which makes me think it might have been myself at the time and not the audiobook. So we all know the story of The Christmas Carol, where Scrooge is haunted by ghosts and shown his past, present and future in the hopes that it will cause him to change his ways. Well, in Good Spirits, we have Harriet, who has been haunted by a ghost and shown her past in the hopes that she will change her ways. However, Harriet isn't a bad person, and it's unclear why she needs to change. This is a fun, fluffy Christmas romance that I enjoyed, and in all honesty, I don't have much else to say about it than that. I liked the characters, I liked the plot, I liked how it came together at the end. It was a relaxing read. Then I read The Bewitching by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. I was really looking forward to this book because I really enjoyed Silver Nitrate by the same author, but I was really disappointed. And if it wasn't for the ending of this book, it would have only been a 2-star. It was another book that I considered DNFing, and another book that I didn't because I was reading it for a challenge. So the book has 3 timelines. The main one follows Minerva, who's a graduate student who is researching the life of Beatrice Tremblay, whose friend's disappearance caused her to write a horror novel. The second timeline follows Minerva's grandmother, as everything in her life starts to go wrong. And the third timeline follows Beatrice and the events leading up to her friend's disappearance. So similarities between the 3 timelines start to emerge, and they begin to question whether something strange is going on and whether witches are involved. I did not care. I couldn't connect to the characters, I couldn't connect to the plot. It's a slow-moving plot, but for the most part I found it too slow-moving and was bored. The ending did become more interesting, and I found that the last 100 pages had me hooked. So that is everything that I read in December, and I think I can figure out why I was able to read so much. So Demon Apocalypse and My Dark Vanessa I started in November, and I think I got quite a big chunk of them read in November, so didn't have that much left in December to read. Then quite a few of the books were short, so these Demon Arta books, they're not particularly long. And of course we had Tom's Mad Mop, which I think was 6 pages maybe, and then 3 books were audio books, and I had quite a few household chores to catch up with, and spent some time over Christmas doing a jigsaw as well, and while doing both those things, listened to audiobooks. And that all made reading 11 books a lot easier. So what did you all read in December? Did you read anything festive? Let me know in the comments, and as always, like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to see more, and I will catch you in the next one.